the screech of tires, the blinding glare of headlights, the sensation of weightlessness as cold water engulfed the car. In those final seconds before consciousness slipped away, Victoria Chen realized with crystal clarity that all her money, all her power, all her carefully constructed walls meant absolutely nothing. The last face she saw before darkness claimed her wasn't from her boardroom or her penthouse. It was the face of the man she'd dismissed as beneath her just 24 hours earlier. Victoria Chen had built an empire by the age of 32. As CEO of TechVista Solutions, she commanded boardrooms with the same ruthless precision her father had taught her. Show weakness, lose everything, he'd drilled into her since childhood. She wore designer suits like armor. Her heels clicked authority with every step, and her sharp tongue had made grown men stumble over presentations. Success was measured in quarterly earnings, not connections. People were assets or liabilities, never complications, which was exactly why she'd agreed to the blind date, only as a favor to her assistant, Maya, who'd been pestering her for months. "You need a life outside the office," Maya had pleaded. "Just one dinner. What's the worst that could happen?" Victoria had rolled her eyes but relented, viewing it as she would any other obligation on her calendar, a box to check. Nothing more. The restaurant Maya chose was far too casual for Victoria's taste. Not the Michelin-starred establishment where she usually conducted business dinners, but a cozy Italian place with checkered tablecloths and the scent of garlic bread wafting through the air. She arrived exactly on time, her black Versace dress and Louboutin heels making her stand out among the families and couples in jeans. That's when she saw him. Ben Morrison sat at the corner table, and Victoria's heart sank immediately. He wore a simple button-down shirt, wrinkled at the elbows, and khaki pants that had seen better days. His watch wasn't a Rolex, but something practical and worn. Worst of all, he had the audible exhaustion of someone who'd rushed from somewhere else, his hair slightly disheveled. "Victoria." He stood, extending his hand with a genuine smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "I'm Ben. It's really nice to meet you." She shook his hand limply, her professional smile frozen in place. "Hello." As they sat, a young waitress approached, and Victoria noticed how Ben thanked her warmly, asking about her day. It was a small gesture, but Victoria found it irritating. Time was money, and pleasantries with service staff were neither. "So Maya tells me you're some kind of tech genius," Ben said, attempting conversation. "I'm the CEO of TechVista Solutions. We revolutionized cloud-based infrastructure for enterprise clients." Her tone was clipped, informative but cold. "That sounds impressive. I have to admit I barely understand how to work my daughter's tablet half the time." Victoria's eyebrow arched. "Your daughter?" "Yeah, Emma. She's 7. She's with my mom tonight, which is why I could actually make it out." He pulled out his phone, and before Victoria could stop him, he was showing her pictures. A gap-toothed girl with wild curls beamed from the screen, covered in what appeared to be paint. This was from her art class last week. She's convinced she's the next Picasso. Victoria glanced at the photo with thinly veiled disinterest. A single father, of course. This was even worse than she'd imagined. "How nice," she said flatly. Throughout dinner, Ben tried. He really did. He asked thoughtful questions about her work, shared stories about his job as a paramedic, and spoke with unfiltered love about his daughter. But Victoria's responses grew shorter, her glances at her phone more frequent. When he mentioned having to budget carefully for Emma's upcoming school supplies, Victoria actually winced. "Must be difficult," she said, not bothering to mask her condescension. "Managing on a paramedic's salary." Something shifted in Ben's expression then, a flash of hurt quickly replaced by quiet dignity. "We do just fine. Emma has everything she needs, and more importantly, she knows she's loved." Victoria scoffed internally. Love doesn't pay for college. Love doesn't build security. She'd learned that lesson watching her mother struggle after her. Father's emotional distance created a different kind of poverty. The final straw came when Ben's phone buzzed. He apologized and checked it. His daughter had sent him a good night text with approximately 15 heart emojis. His face softened completely as he typed back. "Sorry," he said. "Emma likes to say goodnight even when I'm out." How quaint. Victoria signaled for the check. She couldn't endure another minute of this ordinary man with his ordinary life and his obvious financial limitations. What had Maya been thinking? As they stood outside the restaurant, Ben made one last effort. "I had a really nice time tonight. Maybe we could—" "I don't think so." Victoria's words were ice. "You seem like a nice person, but we're from completely different worlds. You have your daughter, your modest career. I have responsibilities, a company to run. I need someone who understands ambition, success, someone on my level." She paused, and then delivered the final blow with a dismissive glance at his outfit. "I need someone who can afford more than wrinkled shirts and casual dinners." Ben's face fell, but he nodded slowly. "I see. Well, I hope you find what you're looking for, Victoria. I really do." There was no anger in his voice, just sadness and perhaps pity, which somehow made Victoria even more irritated. She turned on her designer heels and walked to her Tesla without looking back, already compartmentalizing the evening as a waste of time. As she drove home to her penthouse, she called Maya. "Never again," she snapped. "That man was completely unsuitable. A single father, barely making ends meet, showing me pictures of his kid like I'm supposed to care. I don't have time for people who settled for mediocrity." Maya's sigh was audible. "Victoria, he's a paramedic. He saves lives. And from what I heard, he's a wonderful father. Which is all very noble, I'm sure, but irrelevant to me. I'm focused on my future, and it doesn't include playing stepmother to some kid or slumming it at family-style restaurants." She ended the call, satisfied she'd made her position clear. The next morning, Victoria had an early meeting across town. She'd been up since 5, reviewing contracts and answering emails from international clients. By 7, she was in her car, caffeinated and focused, driving across the Riverside Bridge as dawn broke over the water. She never saw the oil slick. One moment she was mentally rehearsing her presentation. The next, her car was spinning wildly. She gripped the wheel, but it was useless. The Tesla crashed through the bridge railing as if it were paper, and then she was airborne. Time slowed impossibly. She saw the dark water rushing up to meet her, heard the sickening crunch of metal, felt the shocking cold as the river poured through shattered windows. Terror like she'd never known seized her chest. The car was sinking fast and her seatbelt was jammed. Water was already at her waist, rising. She pulled frantically at the belt, her fingers numb and clumsy. The water reached her chest, her neck. She gasped for air, and then there was none left. "This is how I die," she thought with strange clarity. Alone, drowning, all my success meaning nothing. Through the murky water she saw a shape, a figure diving down, swimming with powerful strokes. Strong hands grabbed her door, yanking with impossible force. Once, twice, on the third pull the damaged door gave way. Those same hands pulled a blade from a belt, cutting through her jammed seatbelt. Arms wrapped around her, and she was being pulled upward. They broke the surface together. Victoria gasped and choked, coughing up river water, barely conscious. She heard a familiar voice saying, "I've got you. Stay with me. You're going to be okay." Through blurred vision, she saw his face. Ben. The man she'd mocked less than 24 hours. Ego was keeping her afloat, swimming them both toward the shore with one arm while supporting her with the other. A crowd had gathered on the riverbank. Other paramedics appeared, Ben's colleagues. She would learn later, and suddenly, she was on solid ground with an oxygen mask over her face. Ben was beside her, dripping wet, checking her vitals with professional efficiency while speaking in calm, reassuring tones. "Vitals are stable," he told another paramedic. "Possible hypothermia, water aspiration. We need to get her to Mercy General." Victoria's eyes locked on his face. The man she'd called mediocre, the man whose wrinkled shirt she'd mocked. He'd just jumped into freezing water without hesitation to save her life. "You," she croaked through the oxygen mask. Ben met her eyes, and there was no smugness, no "I told you so." Just genuine concern. "Don't try to talk. You're in shock. We're taking care of you." At the hospital, After they'd treated her for hypothermia and kept her for observation, Victoria learned the full story. Ben had been driving to his shift at the hospital when he'd seen her car go over the railing. Without a second thought, he'd pulled over, grabbed the emergency blade he always carried, and dove in. He'd risked his own life because that's what he did. Not for recognition or reward, but because someone needed help. Victoria lay in the hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, her entire worldview fracturing. She'd spent years believing success meant wealth, power, status, that people's value could be measured in their bank accounts and designer labels. But Ben, whom she'd deemed beneath her, had possessed something far more valuable: the courage to act when it mattered, the strength to dive into dark water for a stranger, the character to risk everything for someone who treated him with contempt. When he stopped by her room later that evening, still in his paramedic uniform from his shift, Victoria couldn't meet his eyes. "How are you feeling?" he asked gently. "Why?" the word burst from her. "Why did you save me? After what I said to you, how I treated you." Ben pulled up a chair, sitting down with a tired sigh. "Because that's not how this works, Victoria. I don't save people based on whether they were nice to me at dinner. I save people because every life matters, even the lives of people who think I'm mediocre because I don't wear expensive suits." She flinched at her own words thrown back at her. "I'm so sorry. I was cruel and shallow and wrong about everything." "Yeah, you were," he agreed, but his voice wasn't unkind. "But we all have our moments of being less than our best selves. The question is what we do after." Victoria was quiet for a long moment, tears sliding down her cheeks, the first she'd cried in years. "I built my whole life on the wrong foundation," she whispered. "I thought success meant having more than everyone else, being above everyone else. But you have something I've never had. You have purpose. You have love. You have a daughter who sends you heart emojis because she knows her dad is a hero. And I have an empty penthouse and a calendar full of meetings with people I don't even like." Ben's expression softened. "It's not too late to build something different." Over the following weeks, as Victoria recovered, she found herself thinking constantly about Ben's words. She started really looking at her life, the loneliness behind the luxury, the emptiness behind the efficiency. She reached out to Maya, apologizing for years of treating her as merely an assistant rather than a person. She began volunteering at the children's hospital where Ben worked, reading to kids who reminded her painfully of Emma. She didn't expect forgiveness, didn't expect Ben to give her a second chance. But 3 months later, when she ran into him at a coffee shop, he was with Emma, and the little girl tugged on his sleeve and whispered loudly, "Is that the pretty lady you saved from the river?" Victoria knelt down to Emma's level. "Hi, Emma. Your dad told me you're an amazing artist." Emma beamed. "I am. Do you want to see my paintings?" Ben met Victoria's eyes over his daughter's head. Something passed between them, an understanding, a possibility. "I'd love that," Victoria said softly. "I'd really love that." As they sat together in that ordinary coffee shop, Victoria realized that this moment with a man in a simple shirt and a paint-stained 7-year-old felt more valuable than any boardroom victory ever had. She'd spent her life climbing to the top, only to discover that what she needed most was waiting at ground level, in the simple, profound act of human connection. Ben hadn't just saved her life that day on the bridge. He'd shown her what a life worth saving actually looked like.